Startup Nation, this is Dr. Carol. I'm just here, wanted to give you guys some helpful tips and things to remember as we move and navigate through this unprecedented health pandemic. The first thing you guys want to remember is please wash your hands thoroughly and frequently. Wash your hands for at least 20 seconds under warm water with soap. If you do not have access to a sink with warm water and soap, please use hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. The next thing you want to do is please avoid large crowds and social gatherings. As young people, our immune systems are typically healthier, and so we can be asymptomatic, which basically means that we can carry the virus if we come in contact with it, and our immune system will recover. But we also pose the risk of spreading it to those who are immunocompromised or who have chronic health conditions and our older people. So please avoid large crowds if you can. The next thing I would say is use respiratory hygiene. If you have to sneeze, if you have to cough, please cover your mouth in your sleeve, not with your hands. Please avoid touching your hands and face after you've done this as well. And please, again, wash your hands. And lastly, if you feel sick, if you have any of these symptoms, which is high fever, initially a dry cough or fatigue, please seek medical help early. If you've been exposed to someone who might have had the virus or been in contact, please stay at home to avoid spreading the virus to anyone else. Again, this is something serious, so we don't want to take it lightly. But those are just some helpful tips and reminders for you guys as we navigate through this pandemic. I hope you guys have a great day and stay safe.
Startup Nation, do you have friends and loved ones that you want to do something nice for, but maybe they live in the next city, the next state, or even halfway around the world? Well, I have a solution for you. Koya is the new and best way to let your friends and family know you're thinking of them. Choose a friend, record a message, and hide it in a location that they are likely to visit, and give them a clue. When they arrive, your message will instantly appear. You can even send them a gift. Best of all, the app is completely free. Get Koya.com to download it now. That's KETKOYA.com. Or check the link in the show notes. Koya. Show you care when you can't be there. The Startup Life is powered by Ladder. Startup Nation, as an entrepreneur, you are the engine that powers your business. We have had many entrepreneurs on the show, from those that played Division II basketball, quite a few Ironman participants, and even an NFL quarterback. And the one thing they all have in common is that they know getting early morning workout wins leads to business success for the day. However, it's super important what fuel you use for your workout to get that early morning success. And that's where Ladder comes in. Ladder is a sports nutrition company founded by LeBron James and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Unlike other supplements, every batch is tested by a third party that is trusted by all major professional sports organizations, including the NBA, NFL, MLB, and more, to verify the highest standards for quality, but more importantly, safety. Ladder's goal is to help you unlock your best in any situation. Right now, that means access to special offers and expert advice from their community. Personally, I like superfood greens. Not only does it include the most essential nutrients that are hard to get in your diet, like magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, and vitamin D, they also included the Rodelio root, which helps keep you healthier when stress is high, but also it helps support immunity according to many studies. Use code BETTEREVERYDAY for 30% off everything site-wide at ladder.sport. That's BETTEREVERYDAY for 30% off at ladder.sport. So maybe you're not trying to be a 4-time league MVP or a 7-time Mr. Olympia, but you still need the tools to elevate your health that elevates your business. So go with Ladder and prepare to get better every day.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation, so I hope you're ready to receive some value today. My name is Dominic Lawson, and this is The Startup Life, the show for entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals. And Startup Nation, with everything going on in our world right now, we could use a little bit of tutorial on leadership, in particular, entrepreneurial leadership. We always talk about the entrepreneurial mindset, but I think today it's time to kind of upgrade our mindset to entrepreneurial leadership. And today's guest is definitely going to help us out with that. He is an award-winning Stanford business professor and chairman of JetBlue Airways. He is also the managing partner and chairman of Peterson Partners, where he has partnered with over 200 entrepreneurs to help scale and grow their businesses. He's often regarded as the Mr. Rogers of Silicon Valley. We're going to talk about that a little bit. He is the one and only, my really good friend, and very appreciative for him to come on the show today, Joel Peterson. How's it going, Joel?
Great, Dominic. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Are you ready to pour some knowledge into Startup Nation today? Because I definitely think you can help us out with that.
Well, I'm eager to talk with you about whatever you want to talk about.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Thank you so much for that. So first things first, Joel, if you would just, with everything going on around us and we're doing our social distancing thing, even right now, I'm not even recording from the studio anymore. I'm recording from my home studio. Just kind of share with us, what you've been experiencing as far as the new normal and everything that's been going on around us.
Well, I'm not sure this is normal at all, but in the airline industry, we're basically shut down.
Right.
I mean, 70% of all planes are grounded. Very few people are traveling, except for medical people maybe, and a few others. But I've also got investments in some 40 or 50 enterprises in various stages of development.
Absolutely.
And of course, some of them are challenged. They may not have the liquidity they need. They may not be at a stage where it's convenient to take a pause. So it's a challenging moment for folks. And I think this idea of being an entrepreneurial leader is actually more relevant today than maybe ever. Even people who didn't think they were entrepreneurial are really having to be entrepreneurial at this stage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And forgive me, Joel Peace, I need to do a quick reset because Startup Nation, Joel is also the author of Entrepreneurial Leadership. I don't know if you caught that earlier. He's the author of Entrepreneurial Leadership, The Art of Launching New Ventures, Inspiring Others, and Running Stuff. Thank you, Joel, for allowing me to kind of plug the book there. Definitely wanted to get that in there for sure. So you were talking about planes being grounded and stuff like that. And, as the chairman of JetBlue, I know you have to be mindful of passengers, be mindful of team members and stuff like that. Kind of talk about those precautions that JetBlue has taken and, during this time to kind of keep passengers safe and team members safe as well.
Well, there's a lot of extra cleaning and disinfecting that's going on. And then people are sitting further apart. Sure. And we're just taking every precaution to make sure that, we've always said that our number one value is safety. Well, now there's a new dimension added to safety.
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. And, if I may, because JetBlue made some news just a few weeks ago about a passenger who was actually tested positive for COVID-19. And that passenger received a lifetime ban from JetBlue. And I wanted to ask you this. I mean, can you walk me through the thought process of leading to that conclusion? Why not like a temporary ban? Why a lifetime ban?
So I wasn't involved in that decision,
Sure.
But I'm guessing that this is somebody who knew they had the virus.
Right.
And actually endangered others. Mm-hmm. And since safety is our number one value, anybody who creates any condition that is unsafe will find that we'll react fairly severely to that.
I appreciate that because, and like you said, safety is so important. And I think our entrepreneurs just need to be reminded of that. But I also think it sends a strong message as well, a positive message, but a strong one that look, we're going to do everything we can to keep people safe. And I think that move was definitely one in that direction. So I appreciate you sharing that.
You bet.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the book, Entrepreneurial Leadership, a little bit. So, I was reading the book and I read the story about your very first entrepreneurial experience, your very first business as a kid that involved a radio flyer wagon and everything. Kind of share with me a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah. So I started, I grew up in the Midwest,
Sure.
A little town in Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
and my father had grown up on a farm, and he was actually a professor, a geneticist, but he wanted me to learn the values of the farm,
Sure.
the law of the harvest. And so he gave me a little plot of land and bought seeds and lent me his hoe and water. And I grew vegetables, and I hired my younger brother, and he delivered vegetables around our neighborhood in a red radio flyer wagon. Mm-hmm. A number of years later, we found a letter that I'd sent to my grandmother where I said, Grandma, I made $14 this summer and I paid Ted a nickel. So that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial career.
Gotcha. What are some of those lessons that you learned as a kid that you use even today, Joel?
Well, I think the idea of delivering value to customers, this idea of delivering fresh vegetables at a price that was attractive by a cute little fellow bringing them around in a red radio flyer wagon, that was really delighting customers. And I think that's one of the main principles of business and of negotiation. You really want to help people get where they want to go. And I think if you can remember that, it's important. But you always have to create a product that is worth more to the customer than it costs you to produce it. You have to turn a profit so you can reinvest in the business and next year's seeds or crop or whatever. And, there are all kinds of stories about inventory levels, not letting things spoil. A lot of things that you have to learn that are very practical day-to-day kinds of lessons that sort of business teaches you. And I found that there are more lessons in doing that kind of thing as an entrepreneur than you may learn at Harvard Business School or Stanford Business School.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that for sure. Also in the book, you talk often about Trammell Crow, who is one of the real estate developers, and you actually worked for Trammell as well. And you talked about how when he gave a speech when you were at Harvard Business, he gave a speech and somebody asked him about, what was, has led to his success in real estate and business and things of that nature. And it wasn't the cliche, like you said in the book, it wasn't the cliche, work hard or follow your passion. He said it was love. Right. And we talk about, for sure. And he talks about in the book about how, he was always taking care of his team members and making sure and having this notion that like there's enough to go around. You don't have to be in this cutthroat Gordon Gekko style of business leadership a little bit. And I want to ask you this, Joel, because, a lot of times people look at entrepreneurs and they associate that with capitalism and they just say like, oh, man, they're just terrible people. But this kind of falls, contrary to that a little bit. Do people have like the wrong misconception about capitalism or making money or business? Kind of talk about that a little bit, if you would, in your opinion.
So I really think they do. So I work a lot with entrepreneurs,
Sure.
and most of them succeed based on their ability to delight customers,
Right.
to bring people things that they need or want. If you think of Steve Jobs, he was kind of a bad boy. He misbehaved. He was selfish. He did all kinds of things that you could criticize him for. But in the end, think of the value he created.
Absolutely.
He didn't take money he brought us the iPhone. He brought us the home computer. He brought us things that really our lives depend on today. He was phenomenally creative. And I find that most of the entrepreneurs I work with really create a lot of value and they create a lot of jobs.
Absolutely.
Many of them are very oriented around their teams too. They realize that they don't succeed alone. They succeed with a team. And so I find that they're really quite exceptional. And there's nothing like capitalism really to provide the most choices to people,
Absolutely.
The best alternatives, the fastest delivery. So the world of the entrepreneur, of the startup, and for your startup nation, it's really kind of where it's at. And I think it'll even be more so when we get back to normal.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that for sure. Once again, we're talking to Joel Peterson, chairman of JetBlue Airways, and also the author of Entrepreneurial Leadership, which is out today, Startup Nation. You can pick that up at your local bookstore where you get your favorite books for sure. So I want to talk about this because this comes up in the book as well. You talk about, David Neeleman, who started JetBlue back in its original founding. But there came a point where David could not, it was probably not in the best interest of JetBlue for him to move on to the next chapter of the airline. A few weeks back, we talked to Mark Randolph, the co-founder of Netflix, and he kind of shared the same thing. So I guess I want to ask you this, as entrepreneurial founders, entrepreneurial, leadership, sometimes we have to sacrifice ourselves for the greater good of the company. And maybe it's time to bring somebody else along for that ride or to lead the ship, if you will. Kind of talk about that decision, what that conversation sounds like when it's time to kind of relieve somebody of that duty, especially when they're the one who founded the company, because that can't be easy.
Well, I think every founder really should anticipate that the company will grow beyond them, their ability, their vision. And that's good news.
Absolutely.
So every founder should start a business preparing to turn it over to somebody else at some point in time. There's a phenomenon called the founder's trap, where people actually stay on too long and they can ruin the company that they created. So there comes a certain point in time when there may be better leadership. Now, that's not always true. But so I've replaced a lot of CEOs over time. And when I do, I always talk to the new CEO about the role. And I typically mention that one of our first discussions needs to be around his or her successor. And it kind of surprises them. But I think it's the job of the board, and I think it's the job of the CEO to be thinking about succession, because what you want to build is a durable enterprise. You want to build an enterprise that allows people to achieve their objectives, achieve their dreams, that provides something meaningful to the marketplace. And you may not always be the right person to help lead that. So I think you want to prepare for that all the way along.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. If I could just ask a quick follow-up, Joel, because you said something that I thought was interesting, because you talked about how, the new CEO kind of looks at what the previous one did and stuff like that. A lot of times I find in, changing of the guard, changing of leadership, where you have some CEOs who adopt some of those things that worked that the previous CEO did. And then you have some who just scrap the entire thing and just want to start anew. I guess what I'm asking is, how do you know what items to scrap, what items to keep, because some things work, some things don't work. I guess, how do you come to those decisions in that regard?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think most businesses over time develop what I call hobbies.
Okay.
They're doing things that really aren't adding that much to the value of the enterprise, may not be that profitable, may not have that much of a future. So I think every business, it's incumbent on every business to look at the business holistically and say, what should we stop doing? What should we start doing? And I think that can happen with an existing CEO. It can happen. I think the next CEO should come in and look at it that way. It's usually only in a severe turnaround where you really do aggressive surgery on everything. Everything comes under the knife.
Gotcha.
And you really do what you can afford. It's not so much what you like or what you may think you may want to do in the future. It really becomes a question of survival. And in those cases, a lot of times you do bring in a new CEO from outside, and he or she must scrap a good chunk of what's been done before.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. That's one of those questions I always just find fascinating when it comes to not just CEOs, but like the principal of a school or the leader of a board, mind you, because I'm always just curious about that philosophy and that psychology as well. So thank you for sharing all of that. For sure. Now, in the book, you shared, speaking of psychology, you shared with us the psychology of shooting wadded up paper in a trash can, and how that can kind of tell you something about that person. And as Startup Nation knows, I am a huge fan of basketball. I used to do that as a kid, where I'll shoot some wadded up paper and just yell Jordan into the basket, right? And so I'm curious about that psychology. Kind of share with us a little bit about that and what we can learn from that, Joel.
So there was a study done many, many years ago, and they had people just shoot wadded up balls of paper into a trash can. Mm-hmm. And they didn't give them any more rules than that. And the people that were the worst at being leaders, at directing things, either went up right to the trash can and dumped it in so they never missed. They could be sure they got it in, or they were the people that went way off in the corner and just chucked it. And with very little chance of it going in, every once in a while they'd make it. The ones that really became effective leaders would stand back 8 or 10 feet. So it was challenging, but not impossible. And it turns out that those people were the ones who tended to make the best, all things considered, best risk decisions. They were challenging, but not impossible.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. That definitely illuminates a lot as we dive forth in our path to entrepreneurship, Startup Nation. So I hope you took some great notes in that answer. So, Joel, I want to ask you this, because in your book, you talk about, the 5 distinct entrepreneurial leadership styles. In Startup Nation, they are the presider, the manager, the administrator, the pure entrepreneur, and the politician. So I wanted to ask you this, Joel. Is it a situation where one person is that archetype all the time, or does one, is let's say the politician at first and then becomes the administrator over time? Or are there some where they just kind of interchange based on the situation at hand? Kind of share with us a little bit about that, if you would.
So you know this term, the 5-tool player that they have for baseball players?
Absolutely, yes.
They're the ones that hit for power, hit for average, can run, field, and throw.
Absolutely.
That's
Mike
the
Trout
5-tool.
comes to mind for sure.
What's that?
I was saying Mike Trout comes to mind for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Or Willie Mays or
Absolutely.
Hank Aaron.
Yeah.
There's a lot of my boyhood hero, Al Kaline, just died on Monday. And he was a 5-tool player for the Detroit Tigers. Probably the least well-known of all the 5-tool players ever, but he was a fantastic guy. In any event, a lot of leaders are merely politicians or merely administrators. They deal with policy, or they are merely presiders. They sit in the corner office, they cut ribbons, they preside, they maintain the status quo. And others are purely entrepreneurs. They light fires. They can't keep them burning, but do they ever light fires? So the entrepreneurial leader is one who is able to combine all of those elements as a 5-tool player and really deliver all of them. Now, he or she doesn't need to be able to do all of them, him or herself. They just need to make sure that they're all done. So in some cases, that means bringing people onto the team who fill in the gaps for where they're not strong. But the entrepreneurial leader makes sure that all of those bases are covered, and they really create durable change. So the way I define the entrepreneurial leader is one who can create durable change.
I hear that.
A change, an enterprise that can be managed by others.
All right, Startup Nation, so we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life. The Startup Life is powered by Ladder. Startup Nation, as an entrepreneur, you are the engine that powers your business. We have had many entrepreneurs on the show, from those that played Division II basketball, quite a few Ironman participants, and even an NFL quarterback. And the one thing they all have in common is that they know getting early morning workout wins leads to business success for the day. However, it's super important what fuel you use for your workout to get that early morning success. And that's where Ladder comes in. Ladder is a sports nutrition company founded by LeBron James and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Unlike other supplements, every batch is tested by a third party that is trusted by all major professional sports organizations, including the NBA, NFL, MLB, and more, to verify the highest standards for quality, but more importantly, safety. Ladder's goal is to help you unlock your best in any situation. Right now, that means access to special offers and expert advice from their community. Personally, I like superfood greens. Not only does it include the most essential nutrients that are hard to get in your diet, like magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, vitamin D, they also included the Rodelio root, which helps keep you healthier when stress is high, but also it helps support immunity according to many studies. Use code BETTEREVERYDAY for 30% off everything site-wide at ladder.sport. That's BETTEREVERYDAY for 30% off at ladder.sport. So maybe you're not trying to be a 4-time league MVP or a 7-time Mr. Olympia, but you still need the tools to elevate your health that elevates your business. So go with Ladder and prepare to get better every day. Tresta powers this episode of The Startup Life. Okay, Startup Nation, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Tresta. Tresta is an app for iPhone and Android that lets you do business calling and texting from anywhere. I know so many entrepreneurs that are still using their personal phone number for business calls. It can get complicated drawing the line between your personal and professional life. Startup Nation, this is the best business phone app out there. Whether you just need a business phone number or if your team is ready for a complete business phone system, Tresta is totally flexible and can grow with your business. And it's all unlimited calling, texting, and all of the powerful call management features like auto attendance, call recording, user groups, and more for just $15 per user per month. With Tresta, there's no contract, and you don't need any special hardware, just your smartphone you're already using. Tresta is easy to configure, so you can set everything up yourself, all online. avoiding all the hassle and high overhead costs of setting up a traditional business phone system, which is important because as entrepreneurs, we are always trying to cut cost and time. They're offering a 30-day free trial so you can see if Tresta's virtual phone system is right for you. Communicate smarter and more efficiently with Tresta. Start now at Tresta.com/startuplife. That's TRESTA.com/startuplife. The link is there in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast. Tresta, business communication simplified. Startup Nation, we tell you all the time that no one does anything great on their own. That includes starting a business or a nonprofit, or even becoming a thought leader or an influencer. My point is that you need a team to do it successfully and responsibly. And that is why you should contact DR and Associates. Danielle and her team provide branding solutions, along with digital and social media marketing that provide tangible results you are looking for. No matter if you are a Fortune 500 company or an author looking to make an impact, DR and Associates needs to be part of your team. They are one of the few firms whose leadership has been recognized by Google, which is proof of concept that they are very good at what they do. Contact DR and Associates today to grow your online presence. The number is 615-933-3681, or you can visit their website at drandassociates.com. Also, make sure you follow their Facebook page as well. DR and Associates, providing real clients with real results. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life. Joel, you may not know this or not, but this episode of The Startup Life is actually the debut episode on the Military Broadcast Radio Network. And so, shout out to H-Train and all those cats out there in Denver, Colorado. And so with that being said, I know a few years back in 2010, General Stanley McChrystal joined the board at JetBlue Airways. And so I wanted to, and he wrote the foreword for your book as well. I wanted to ask you this, because we have a lot of military members who, veterans and things of that nature who want to dive into the business world, the life of entrepreneurship. What are some of those things that you saw in General McChrystal that, bode well for him in the life of business, in the life of entrepreneurship, in your opinion?
Well, it's interesting. This is a slight aside, but a lot of people, when they first read the book, they say, wait a minute, you list Stan McChrystal and Alan Mulally as entrepreneurial leaders. Alan Mulally, of course, ran Boeing. Absolutely. And then Ford Motor Company. And how can that be an entrepreneurial leader? That's a kind of a corporate executive. How can Stanley McChrystal, a 4-star general, be an entrepreneurial leader? But if you think about the special forces, the Force Recon Marine, Army Rangers, Navy SEALs.
Absolutely.
These were proud special forces group that were it's not that they didn't get along. It's just they competed with each other. They didn't share everything. And General McChrystal made it so that they were a unit. They shared a vision. And he really created teams. And he did all the things that I described in the book. I say there's basically a formula you must follow if you want to become an entrepreneurial leader. The first thing is you have to establish trust. You have to be trustworthy yourself, and you have to create a culture that is a high trust culture. The second thing you have to do is you have to be clear about the mission. So absolute clarity about which peak you're climbing and making sure everybody is belayed and that you get them all to the top of the peak. The third thing is you have to pick the right team. You have to get the right people on the field and the wrong people off the field. And so there's that whole process. And then the fourth thing is that you have to execute. And executing to perfection, delivering on results, is typically an issue of about I listed 10 things that I find that every entrepreneurial leader ends up having to do. And so if you do those 4 things, those are really the things that are sort of the peers. They're the foundation for building a great entrepreneurial leadership career.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing all of that for sure. And last question about the book before we transition, Joel, I just want to ask, what's the number one thing you want Startup Nation and entrepreneurs and startup founders to get from your book, Entrepreneurial Leadership?
Well, so I always hate these number one things. It's a little bit like the question.
I know it's a bit lazy. I'm sorry.
No, it's not that. It's just people ask you, is air or food or water the number one thing? Well, you're going to die without any of it.
Fair enough.
So to me, the most important thing is to realize that anyone can become an entrepreneurial leader. There's a discipline around it, just like there is for anything else. And practice makes perfect. And I think if you're intentional around, and if you think about these four things, how do I build trust? How do I create a compelling mission? How do I assemble the team that is going to win? And then how do we execute to perfection? That's the basic thing. And then I think it's learning the checklist. You know, an airman, no matter how many times they've flown an airplane, every single time they get behind the yoke, they will go through a checklist. And they'll go and they'll check off everything, even though they've done it 1,000 times.
Right.
And I think it's the same kind of thing in running a business effectively as an entrepreneurial leader. There are checklists. There are ways that you can increase your odds. You're making decisions under conditions of uncertainty. Those aren't going to be more certain, but you can have a mindset and a way of going about that your odds go up, that you'll make good decisions. You can learn how to deal with adversity. You can learn how to manage a board. All these things are learnable. So I guess that's the optimistic message, is that anybody who wants to become an entrepreneurial leader, one who delivers a durable change, can do so with discipline and intentionality.
I hear that. Quick follow-up, because, you know, like we mentioned, you are chairman of JetBlue, the chairman of the board at JetBlue. And actually here in Memphis, I'm actually board president of a tap dance company here in Memphis, where we're the first and only tap dance company, nonprofit here in Memphis. And so I am one of the newest members on the board, and I got elected president the other day, and everybody's a little older than me. And I'm a little weary about, like, you know, setting directives and, you know, giving advice and stuff like that. Could you give me a little bit of, you know, I'm sorry, Startup Nation, I'm going to get some little mentoring here if you don't mind me. What advice would you give me as a newly minted board president, Joel, if you don't mind?
So I think I actually, I'll tell you a little story here to illustrate.
Absolutely.
This. I had an interview with Adam Grant, who used to write the column for the New York Times called The Corner Office. And he spent 90 minutes with me, and we talked about everything under the sun. I had no idea what the article would be that he wrote. And in the end, he entitled it Listening with No Agenda. And I think that's the advice I would give. I think a lot of times, you know, when you're talking to somebody, you can tell that they're just waiting to say what they want to say. They're not really listening to you.
Fair enough.
They're just waiting until you pause so they can say whatever it is they want to say. I think the most powerful thing you can do as a new leader, particularly one that's younger, is to listen, to ask the second and third question, to get you and to really establish these high trust relationships with the people that are there. They will then get behind you, pull together with you, help you achieve what it is you want to. But if you don't listen, if you don't start out with listening, you're going to have an uphill climb.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing all of that. I really appreciate it. And once again, Startup Nation, the book is Entrepreneurial Leadership: The Art of Launching New Ventures, Inspiring Others, and Running Stuff. There are some fantastic chapters in here, Startup Nation. And the reason I love this book, and I really want you to put it in your entrepreneurial toolkit, is because this is not a one-time book read. This is a book that you can read it now and then read it 10 years later, and it's still going to apply, because different things are going to happen in your business on your path to entrepreneurship. And Joel has done a fantastic job of laying out how-to steps as far as, like, how to communicate, how to raise capital, how to sell things, how to negotiate. So I definitely want you to put that in your entrepreneurial toolkit. Thank you so much for this book, Joel. I really appreciate it. I just want to get that in there really quick before we move forward.
Well, thanks for those kind words, Dominic. It's funny, I've taught now for 28 years at Stanford, and I've been an entrepreneur or a coach or a board member for 46 years, I guess. Mm-hmm. And this is really, in some ways, the culmination of the mistakes I've made and the things I've learned, in many cases, the hard way. And so there's a lot of pattern recognition.
Absolutely.
You know, where I've seen the movie enough times to be confident to say to entrepreneurs, hey, I've really seen where you are right now. Think about looking through this lens when you address this problem.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing all of that. And so I was going to ask this a little bit later, but since you mentioned it, you know, let's kind of talk about it now, because you said you've been the professor at Stanford Business Graduate School for about 28 years now. I guess I wanted to know, what's one of the things you just love about teaching?
The young people. There's nothing like young people.
I hear that.
Bright young minds, hunger to learn, They're idealistic, they're inexperienced, they're willing to listen, to change, to argue, they're fantastic. I really do love my students. And I think if I look back on a long career and a long life, I will always say that one of the most important things I ever did was in the classroom with young people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you actually say that at the end of this book, for sure. What's something that, in your 28 years there at Stanford that a student actually taught you, Joel?
So every day they teach me how to be clearer, how to communicate better, how to care more, how to listen better. We do a lot of role plays in the classes that I teach, and in every one of those, it's a real challenge because it's in real time. Mm-hmm. You don't have a script; they don't have a script, and so you have to learn to listen, to be sensitive, to be aware of things. I've made a bunch of mistakes where I've just not been as sensitive as I might have to students, and I really realize there are areas of sensibilities and sensitivities that I'm just dense about, unaware of. Gotcha. And so they've really helped me understand that.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. So, I want to ask this, Joel, because, you being a teacher yourself, and we're in this era of social distancing, and obviously schools are closed and things of that nature. And a lot of parents at home are homeschooling students and things of that nature. But even still, there are teachers who are still doing Zoom meetings. They're still providing lessons for students around the country and around the world, mind you. I want to ask you this because this is always a hot topic when it comes to teaching. Should teachers deserve a raise? Should they be paid more than they are now, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's hard to pay teachers enough.
Fair enough.
I really do think that they can change lives. They can really do a lot of things. Now, that's not to say that some kind of collective bargaining, union-driven response for everybody is the right thing. I just wish there were a better way to reward excellent teachers. I would love to see them get rid of tenure so that people really, it's really a performance-based thing. Gotcha. I think teachers who care and who do a great job, you can't almost pay them enough. But there's payment in lots of ways other than money.
That's true.
Too, to me, I've actually given all of my salary for the last 28 years. I've given it back to Stanford in one form or another.
Oh, wow.
So it's not the payment. It's that, to me, I'm paid amply by having a chance to be a part of the lives of the young people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. I really appreciate that transparency there, Joel, for sure. So I want to ask you this because you talked about in the book a little bit, going back to the book a little bit, about, the many failures and mistakes that you've made and stuff like that. What's one mistake that you just really like, man, I really missed the boat on that one? What's that one mistake that you kind of harp on sometimes?
Well, the one that's the hardest to get over is I ended up trusting people beyond the moment in time that I should have.
Understood.
I should have been smart enough to realize that they were not behaving as fiduciaries. They were not really acting in the best interest of others, and kind of hoping against hope that they would, or that they would learn. My experience in that kind of betrayal is you're better off getting out of business immediately with somebody if you have that kind of concern. Moving on, forgiving them, not revisiting it, but just moving on with life. There's plenty of things to do in life to not put up with somebody that you don't think has high integrity.
Understood. Thank you for sharing all of that for sure. So, Startup Nation, Joel is actually also the founding managing partner and chairman of Peterson Partners, where he's helped entrepreneurs and startup founders kind of scale and grow their businesses as well. I wanted to ask you this because back in August, you had your investors conference and you had Condoleezza Rice there, who is a big hero of mine here in Memphis. I wanted to ask you this: for those of us who didn't attend that conference, for entrepreneurs and startup founders, what would we have learned, from Condoleezza, if we were there, that could help us in our business on our path to entrepreneurship, in your opinion?
I think the first thing is you would have come away blown away by this woman, how incredible she is, how much she knows, how articulate she is. I'd never hear her pause or lose her way. Every paragraph has a topic sentence. Every paragraph has a conclusion. Everything ties to everything else. She is incredibly prepared. She is a prodigy. And to me, one of the ways that you inspire trust in others is by being prepared. Because fundamentally, you're delivering on a promise. You have a brand. Each of your listeners has a brand, and that becomes their promise to the world. And people can either really rely on that brand and say, boy, that Dominic always delivers the following. And that's a powerful brand. Or you can be unprepared and not deliver on the brand, and that will destroy trust. And so I would say that Condi has an amazing brand, and she delivers. She just delivers.
Absolutely. Really quickly, because I remember a few years back, right before Roger Goodell was actually hired or brought on as to lead the NFL as his commissioner. Some said that Condoleezza Rice was on that short list as well. How do you think she would have led the NFL through these past years if she was actually picked as the NFL commissioner?
So it's funny. That's a funny question, because we had a question from the audience that somebody said, what would it take to get you to run for president? Okay. And people were really kind of pushing on. After you speak for a while, you say, wow, would I love to have her as our president?
Right.
In any event, I wove the same question in. I said, Condi, I've heard that you might be up for being NFL commissioner. And she laughed and she said, the reason that rumor started is I was once asked if I would run for president, and I said, I'd rather be NFL commissioner. That's how that all got started. Now, to answer your question, if she were asked to do it, anything she put her mind to, she would be spectacular. I was just on the search committee for the Hoover Institution, which is a think tank on the campus at Stanford. And we asked Condi Rice to be the next director, and she's agreed. And she'll be phenomenal, and she'll make a difference at Hoover and in our nation in that role. So I'm really looking forward to that. You've actually hit on one of my heroes.
One of the biggest things that a lot of magazines and magazine articles like Entrepreneur and Inc. and stuff like that talk about is that one of the keys to success is finding the right partner. And so I wanted to ask you about your wife, Diana. How important has she been on your path to entrepreneurship and your career success?
She's been a partner. She's really been vital. And I think it's for one of the reasons that I would mention is that we're quite different. She can do things that I can't do, and I think I can do things that she can't do. So we fill in for each other. We have the same values, which I think is critical. It's very tough to have a great partnership if you disagree on values. Values are merely your priorities. And if you have very different priorities, that's tough. But it's really nice if your skills are complementary. So she's very detail oriented. I'm a disaster from an administrative standpoint. I'm big picture. I fly at 30,000 feet. She flies at strafing level.
Gotcha.
And so we're able to kind of share projects, and she does her thing and I do my thing, and the result is better than it would be either of us on our own.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing all of that. For sure. Joe, if you could go back in time and talk to one person and ask them one question, who would that person be and what would you ask them?
Oh, man. That's one I want to think about for a while. I mean, you're talking about anybody in history?
Anybody in history. Who's the first person comes to mind?
Well, the first person that comes to mind for me as a Christian is Jesus Christ.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I would really want to, there could be no more interesting interview for a Christian.
Right.
But I think any of the founding fathers would be interesting.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you watched this production of Hamilton, but I watched it on Broadway, and then I bought the book and I read it twice, and I thought Alexander Hamilton is really in many ways the father of our way of life, Absolutely. of our Constitution. I would love to interview Alexander Hamilton.
I hear that. I have not been able to check out Hamilton, but all my friends keep telling me you got to check it out. So
you need to.
Joel Peterson said I got to check it out, so now I got to check it out for sure. I appreciate that for sure. What's your entrepreneurial superpower, Joel, and why?
I'm not sure I have any superpowers, really.
Okay.
I do tend to do two things fairly well. I tend to pick great people. I've been in business with wonderful people who really do fill in for me and make me better than I otherwise am. I do believe that business is a team sport, and you want to surround yourself with people who are better than you are. So I think I have a pretty good sense of what makes somebody really good and reliable. And then I think the second thing is that people tend to trust me. I deliver on promises and I work hard at it. And I do it a conversation at a time. I do it a delivery at a time. I do it an event at a time. I think about them and I try to make sure that I don't disappoint. I think those two things are probably, those certainly aren't superpowers, but they're certainly things that have guided my life.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing all of that for sure. And before I ask the last question, I just want to say, Joel, thank you so much for coming on The Startup Life. We definitely appreciate your book. We appreciate the value that you gave us today. And once again, Startup Nation, book is Entrepreneurial Leadership, The Art of Launching New Ventures, Inspiring Others, and Running Stuff. And if you listen to the replay on the podcast, we have a link there in the show notes for you to go and purchase that book. And Joel, just as a way of saying thank you, our sponsor for this segment is Philip Stein, who specializes in wearables and wellness and stuff like that. And we would like to send you one of our newest sleep bracelets there. We'll get with your team and stuff like that. But, we'd like to offer that to you as a way of saying thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, how kind. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So with that being said, look, I'm actually going to turn the microphone over to you because there's an entrepreneur out there or a startup founder who, especially in this day and age, Joel, with social distancing and everything, they're feeling a little stuck. They're feeling a little afraid to kind of move forward in their business. Give us some last words of encouragement or motivation to take us out today, if you would, sir.
Well, I think you're in a challenging environment. There's a certain level of adversity that many people haven't faced before. But I think adversity provides the opportunity to shine. It provides unique opportunities. I think there are dazzling things that happen when people are under pressure and have to perform. And I think if you look for that, if you look to ease others' burdens, to help other people through this, you'll find that you'll succeed in ways you never imagined. So I would say stay on offense, keep working, keep plugging away, don't get discouraged. My hero in life has been Winston Churchill. I have a picture of him on my wall, and I always think about his speech to the Harrow School, where he basically, I think it was around the time he said, never in the history of human affairs has so much been owed by so many to so few. He was speaking about the Royal Air Force after the Battle of Britain. And he said, never, 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 never give up, except to things that I forget, but it was things of character and ethics or whatever. So this idea of perseverance and the idea that adversity, Churchill also said that all of the bad things that happened to him in his life turned out to have been the best things ever for him. And so I think while this is a challenging moment, particularly for entrepreneurs, I think it's also a great moment. It's a time when they can really distinguish themselves, they can make a difference in the world, and they'll survive and thrive.
I hear that. Thank you so much for all of that, Joel. I really appreciate that. And Startup Nation, that's going to wrap up this session of The Startup Life. Joel, thank you so much for your time, your energy, your content, and the value that you provide. We really appreciate you today.
Thank you so much, Dominic.
If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new startup blog where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, Be about that life, the startup life. Oralex powers this episode of The Startup Life. Startup Nation, as a podcaster, radio host, and business owner, I know a thing or two about the need for your message to come through clearly to your target audience. The last thing you want when trying to close a big deal over the phone or giving a sales presentation in your conference room is to have the person you are talking to be distracted by either the fact that you sound like you're in a warehouse or an outside noise like a fire truck. Trust me, Startup Nation, I know this all too well from experience. And that is why Oralex has your back. Oralex Acoustics creates professionally tested products that you can trust in a commercial space or at home. Better office acoustics improves intelligibility when video conferencing or generic conversation, reduces stress, and helps build a proactive work atmosphere. From a home studio for my content creators to your office space downtown, your gear performs better in an acoustically treated room. Trust me, you are in good hands with Oralex as they are the #1 brand in acoustics, providing trusted solutions for over 40 years. Also, you can download the Oralex Acoustic Treatment mobile app in the Apple or Google Play Store to give you specifically designed and instantaneous recommendations for various room types. Go to Oralex.com and use the promo code STARTUP in all caps for 10% off your entire order. The link is there in the show notes if you are listening to the replay on the podcast. So if you are ready to stop sounding like you're having a sales meeting in a sports arena, go with Oralex. Professional audio made simple. This episode is brought to you by Lena Creamer. Many of us love to power our morning with a good cup of coffee. However, sometimes we feel guilty because we will have to pay for that cup, or let's be honest, Startup Nation, that second cup on the treadmill later, especially when we add creamer. And that's where Lena Creamer comes in. The gluten-free, sugar-free, lactose-free, but also guilt-free option for your coffee. It uses a combination of coconut oil and natural supplements to jumpstart your entrepreneurial journey for the day. Not a coffee drinker? No problem. Use it as a sugar substitute in your tea, oatmeal, or whatever else you like to sweeten. Go to lenacreamer.com and use the promo code STARTUP15 at checkout. If you are listening to the podcast, the link is there in the show notes. Lena Creamer. Begin a healthy new chapter.